How many dreadnoughts is too many dreadnoughts? This is the question on every Custode player's mind. We've got an awesome freaking detachment, and I'm going to teach you exactly how to kit out and how to operate and run all of your dreadnoughts in today's video. And we're going to give you some army lists to get you started in the Solar Spearhead. So let's break this bad boy down. What is the correct amount of dreadnoughts in Solar? Well, it's the new Grumps detachment, and we've done reviews over all the stratagems and stuff. We're not going to talk about that in today's video. Today, I'm going to be talking about the dreadnoughts specifically and actually list building. So I've got a couple different lists that have been performing really, really well on various clients, myself, and we've got a couple different tournaments coming up that we're bringing them to. So I figured I'd go ahead and share it with all of you guys so that you can have the best experience with your Custodes as possible. So currently, Solar's sitting at roughly a 53% win rate. One of the really nice things about that 53% win rate is that is right on the edge. So it's fairly unlikely that Games Workshop is going to be giving it a nerf, especially as that win rate continues to drop as people adapt to all the dreads and how to play against them. One big problem in Solar Spearhead is that there is no mortal wound protection outside of one enhancement, which means as people learn this, they're going to figure out how to handle dreadnoughts in a much better way, and you're going to see it. You're going to see that win rate probably drop down a little bit more, probably to that 51% level, because it is a good detachment. It is a strong detachment, but it's probably not. Well, in my opinion, it's definitely not worth nerfing. But there are other people who will argue that. So basically, the reason why it enables dreads is it actually makes them usable. All the dreads are completely unusable for Custodes because they only move 6 inches, which is undoable for a model that can't move through walls. So the detachment gives them the movement speed that they just should have naturally, which is a movement of 6 and a movement of 8. A movement of 8 because they get +2, and a movement of 10 on the Telemon because he gets +2 from 8 to 10. And then in addition to this, when they are below starting strength, they're going to get reroll hit rolls of 1, and when they're below half of starting strength, you get reroll wound rolls of 1 as well. And this makes a very, very big difference in the actual damage output that these juggernauts can dish out. They're also going to have +2 OC when they're uninjured, which can kind of annoy people for early game denial, primary denial. So that's just it's something that really doesn't come up very much, but it's an interesting little action buff. But a big one that a lot of people tend to forget is the +1 to advance and charges. This actually matters a ton. The +1 to charge is a very, very powerful ability. +1 to advance as well, seeing as this detachment does give you the ability to advance and charge walker units specifically. So initially, people are definitely going to want to run full dreadnoughts in their armies, but is that the correct decision? Well, we're going to answer that in today's video. Let's talk quickly about how we're going to kit out some of our dreads, because you're going to be able to have the ability to give enhancements to 2 of your dreadnoughts. So really only the enhancements that matter. You've got 3 of them. 1 you'll never really take. So 1 enhancement is going to be the 5-up Feel No Pain. This was tailor-made for the Telemon. You're always going to put it on a Telemon. There is an argument for why you might put it on a Galatus, because the Galatus with the 4-up invulnerable save and the -1 to be wounded in melee, plus a 5-up Field of Pain, makes him actually a pretty tough cookie to shatter as well, especially if you don't want to dish out the points or the money for the Telemon. Then you've got 1 enhancement that's going to give +1 attack, strength, and damage. Now, this can be nasty on a Telemon if they're running double fist, so that would take them up to 8 attacks with strength 13, damage 4 punches, which is not nothing. But it also works well on a Galatus, bringing him up to that strength 9, which is a pretty critical breakpoint for going into vehicles, with the 9 attacks at damage 3. So that's, or damage 4 for him. So that would be a good breakpoint. It's also even nice on a Bite Captain, give him the 7 attacks going up to strength 8 and damage 3. But really, where this enhancement's always going to go, you're always putting it on a Blade Champion if you're taking anything that's not dreads, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, because it really just turns the Blade Champion into a total psychopath. Getting damage 3 devastating wounds and getting a damage 2 sweep attack is brutal on him. Then you have the 3rd enhancement that we will probably see, that you might see, and this is a 6-inch order of reroll hit rolls of 1s to infantry and mounted. This is particularly good against things like Virtus Praetors if they're taking the Hurricane Bolters, or Alaris Terminators when they're shooting, because they're going to have massive buckets of dice a lot of the times. So that can be actually quite useful. It can also be really useful for helping to get just a few more sustained hits in the fight phase one, guys. And then there is a last enhancement, which basically no one's ever going to take. but you can put it on an infantry or a mounted model, and it's going to provide fallback and shoot to vehicles that are within 6 inches. You're pretty much never going to take this. If it was fallback, shoot, and charge, you probably would, but it's not. It's only fallback and shoot, which makes it kind of bad. All right, let's look at the Venerable... Oh, sorry, I did not put this guy's picture in the correct place. I did not design this PowerPoint very well. So we're going to start breaking down the individual dreadnoughts here. So the first one we're talking about is the Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought. Now, he is a pretty darn cool guy. He has an ability that I kind of hated, but now I kind of like him. This is a perfect example of one of those types of models that gets better the more that you take. So let me explain. You're going to have movement 6, so movement 8 in this detachment, 2 up armor save, 5 up invulnerable save, toughness of 9, and 10 wounds. You can either give him a multi-melta and a combi weapon, or you can give him a multi-melta and his carries patterned autocannon. You'll always take the multi-melta. You do not need help with more just damage 1, AP 1 shooting out there. You've got tons of that in Custodes, although most of Custodes is going to be AP 1 damage too, so you just don't need more of that profile. You'll take the multi-meltas, which are hitting on 2s, because you're Custode, which is cool. Melee, you're going to have 5 attacks of a weapon skill of 2, strength 12, AP 2, and damage 3. This is just a solid melee profile, and it's going to be basically the same for all the dreads with a few differences. Now, when they die, their ability is on a 2-up. They will get to stand up again at the end of the phase with D6 remaining wounds outside of engagement range. Now, the cool thing about this is when they stand up, they're going to be almost certainly under half strength, and that means that they're going to immediately be able to get reroll 1s to hit and wound, which will increase their power quite a bit. The reason why this is super powerful is it can wreak havoc on a lot of the armies that are generally going to be considered your single phase armies. These are going to be armies like Tau, who really only have shooting, they don't have melee, which means, okay, they kill the Venerable Dreadnought in shooting, well, it stands back up. They can't do anything about it in the melee phase, or the fight phase, which means now your Venerable Dread has an entire turn to activate even though it was already killed. It works really great against World Eaters. They have to kill it in melee. There's no way they're going to kill it in shooting, which means he's going to stand up and he's going to have an entire turn to activate. Guard, all armies like this, and certain skew builds in other factions as well. And he's only 160 points, which means he's not really that expensive. Now, if you are taking the Venerable Contemptor Dread, my encouragement for you is to take 3 of them. The reason for this is, and I'll get more in details on this when I go over some of the army list, which I'll go over in just a bit. The reason for this in particular is that your opponent is going to struggle with deciding when to deal with Venerable Contemptor Dreadnoughts. Because if you're running 3 of them, your opponent has to decide, do I kill these guys early, which means he has to ignore the rest of your army, because you got to kill them for the first time, and then you got to kill them the second time. So do I handle them early, which means the rest of your army gets to move up the battlefield basically unmolested, or do I ignore them and kill the rest of your army, which means by rounds 3 or 4 or 5, when they die for the first time, your opponent might not have enough left to kill them a second time. So it really causes a conundrum for a lot of your opponents. So I recommend, if you take Venerable Contemptor Dreads, always run the multi-melta and run 3 of them if you're going to be taking them. If you have some weird points break and you can only afford 1, but that gets you to 2,000 on the dot, maybe it's fine, but they get a lot better in triplicate than they are in single kit. Anyway, let's talk about the Achilles Dread. Now, this is a guy who I freaking love. I think he's awesome, and I just don't take him. I can't really figure out a good purpose for him. So he's got the same defensive and movement as the Venerable Dread, 2 up armor save, 5 up invulnerable save, moves 8. He's got, 10 wounds, T9. His melee is a little bit better. It's still 5 attacks, still hitting on 2s, still strength 12, but it does have Lance. It's still AP 2, but the damage isn't damage 3, it's D6 plus 1. So strength 12 with Lance, with D6 plus 1 damage. The guy actually does hit pretty hard in melee, but he suffers from, he's a 2-up model with a 5-up invulnerable save with 10 wounds. You throw a grenade and you get a good tank shock and he dies, which is pretty dang troublesome. He's pretty vulnerable for firepower. He doesn't have the protection of the Vendreads, which is they get to stand up at the end of the phase. Makes him pretty easy to kill. He does slap relatively okay in melee. Now, he does have a few options for shooting, which admittedly are quite decent. So you get to take 2 of the following. You can either take 2 of his Infernus Incinerators, which is just a strength 6 heavy flamer. You can take 2 of his Last from Storm Bolters, which you're probably never going to take. It's a strength 5 bolter, so you're probably just not going to do that. Or you can take 2 of his twin Adrathic Destructors. This is an interesting option. It is only 18-inch range. It's strength 6, AP 2, damage 3, but it is twin linked. So you could have 2 shots of that just to maybe plink off some elite infantry. I liked this guy a lot better in 9th edition where he had 4 of those shots. But you know what? Those are your options. I would most likely, in all reality, probably give him the Infernus Incinerators, but I think the Twin Adrethic Destructor is worth considering. Now, his ability was when you're selected to fight, roll a d6 for 1 unit in engagement range. On a 4 to 5, they suffer d3 mortals, and on a 6, you're going to suffer 3 mortals flat, and you add 2 to the roll if you charge this turn. Now, it does specifically say charge this turn, meaning this does work off of heroic interventions, which is pretty cool because you can set up those nice heroic intervention plays to help with his movement and just cause mortals at the start whenever he activates the fight. This can be actually quite useful. It's not the greatest. It's only on a 4-up if you didn't charge, but it's something, and he is the cheapest dread coming in at 155. Now, I personally am not taking this guy, but if you did want to take him, he's probably pretty good as just being the guy who comes in at that awkward 155 points, which custodian armies can awkwardly find themselves at that strange points value where they can't fit Venatari, maybe they don't want 2 Virtus Praetors, and there's just nothing else you could really get for that point cost. I think that's probably where the Achilles Dread shines. Other than that, I'm probably not running him, but I would like to hear how you're running him. But let's talk about some of the guys that we are running. I love this next Dread. This is the Galatus Dread. This guy is awesome, and he's really, really exciting now that we can, actually play with our new toys in the new detachment. Oh, sorry, I cut myself off a little bit here. Let me just adjust my camera. Boop, 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 boop. What am I doing here? There we go. All right, make my face smaller for you. So he's got the same defensive profile, except he has a 4-up invulnerable save instead of a 5-up invulnerable save. Now, that is a massive increase in durability against your anti-tank weaponry. Going to be your las cannons, some multi-meltas, dark lances, whatever. This makes a huge difference in his durability. He also has more attacks than the other dreads. He goes to 8 attacks, hits on 2s, strength 8, AP 2, damage 3. So what does this tell us? He is your anti-elite infantry killing machine. He's going to take sustained hits. He's basically always going to be rerolling the ones to wound because he's going to be, or to hit because he's going to be wounded somehow. So that's going to give him the opportunity to get a lot of hits on these elite infantry and just smash through them. So we like him. We also really like this guy with the Adamantine Talisman, which is the thing that could give him 9 attacks, strength 9, damage 4. That makes him actually a threat to a lot of vehicles as well. His low strength is a little bit weird. I would have liked to see it at maybe strength 9 base, maybe strength 10 base. But you know what? I think he has a lot to offer. He does have a inbuilt strength 6 heavy flamer. It's just 1. It's cute. No big deal, but it's nice to have. And then lastly, he has a very strong ability, which is he is -1 to be wounded in melee. Now, when you couple that with the fact that he is T9, against almost all elite infantry in the game, the guy's going to be wounded on 6s. That is powerful. So this is your dude who is tailor-made for heroic intervening or charging through the wall when you use your stratagem to just go murder Blade Guard veterans, go murder Inner Circle companions, go murder most Terminators, go murder Sanguinary Guard. He is a huge problem that most people just are not equipped to deal with, especially in this meta where we're seeing a ton of elite infantry. Think Bile, right? Creations of Bile. Think your World Eaters. There is just a ton of models that are going to be wounding him on 6s. Now, of course, your Exalted 8-bound will probably be using their Big Fist, but even then they're winning them on 4s, not 3s, which is a huge deal. He's also short enough, which makes him easy to move and hide in ruins. So this is a big deal. He's got much more durability than the other Dreadnoughts, and he is serving a different purpose from the other Dreadnoughts. So at 165, I like him. I take 1. I could see arguments for taking 2, but I have found that 1 is the sweet spot because there's really only one place that you're going to have to counter a lot of your elite infantry most of the time. And then your other dreads aren't exactly bad until elite infantry, seeing as they have the flat 3 damage as well. So I am running one of these guys. He is a actual candidate for the 5-up Field of Pain if you're not running Telemons. He's also a candidate for the additional damage from the Adamantine Talisman if you're not running the Blade Champion. So let's talk about the Telemon Dread now. We have a big boy. This guy is the coolest model in the world, and for whatever reason, he just doesn't get the profile we want him to have. But in Solar Auxiliary, or Solar, oh my gosh, in this detachment, this dude has play. He's got play, and I'm really excited about it. So he actually gets up to movement 10. Now, when you couple that with the advance and charge strat and the strat to move through walls, you could move this guy through a wall 17 inches since he's +1 to advance if you roll 6 for your advance. That guy moving 17 inches directly through a wall can ruin any opponent's gameplay, because then he charges in with his, if you're taking double fist, he's going to charge in with his 8 attacks, or 7 attacks, sorry, forgive me, 7 attacks at strength 12, AP 2, damage 3. That is a big deal, especially when you consider that he's going to be re-rolling hit rolls of 1 if he's been damaged. He is an option to take the Adamantium Talisman for +1 attack, strength, and damage, taking him all the way up to 8 attacks, going up to strength 13 and damage 4 with his fist. So he's an option for that as well. But you're almost always going to be taking at least one Telemon, and you're going to give him the Augury Web, which is going to give him the 5-up Gona Pain, because his special ability is -1 damage. So now you have a 12 wound model with a toughness of 10, which isn't that high, but it's better than a toughness of 9, that's for certain. He's got a 4 invulnerable save built in, and he's -1 damage with a 5-up Gona Pain. This guy is tough to shift. Very tough to shift. Now, when it comes to equipment, what do we give him? Do we give him 1 fist, double fist? Do we give him his storm cannons? Well, here's my recommendations. If you go double fist, you're going to give him +2 attacks, which gives him 7 base attacks instead of 5. That is actually relatively significant, so we want to pay attention to that. But then if we look at his other guns, we have a Arachnus Storm Cannon, which is going to be 12 shots, strength 6, AP 1, damage 1 with dev wounds. Or you can give him the Iliastus Accelerator Culverin, which is 4 shots, strength 9, AP 1, damage 3. Now, this army has plenty of damage 3. You don't need to worry about the damage 3 and anti-elite infantry. And the AP 1 on that does make it close to useless. You've got no way to boost that AP. So if you're going to take a gun, I recommend the Arachnus Storm Cannon, which can be really good for helping clear hordes, or just taking the 1 damage off of something if you happen to need the dev win. So I would take a Arachnus and a single fist. When you take the fist, you get a weird like D3 shot twin-linked flamer. So I'm either going to take 1 fist and the storm cannon, or I'm going to take double fist. So that's the options. He's 215 points. He is pricey. You can run this guy solo, or you can run him in triplicate. When you run him in triplicate, you present your opponents with a serious problem, because now they've got 3 huge stopping robots, all which actually have threatening melee, all which are tough to shift because they're all -1 damage, and a 4-up invulnerable save. One who's super tough to shift with his 5-up Feel No Pain. I like to run 3 of these guys behind 3 of the Ven Dreads, and it is absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting, because if you try to kill the Telemons, you're really hoping they don't hit those 4 Feel No Pain, the 4 invulnerable saves, and that means you're ignoring the Ven Dreads, which just then they're never going to die. If you kill the Ven Dreads, then the Telemons are going to get to your lines unmolested, which is a really big problem. So we talked about all of the Dreadnoughts in depth. Now I'm going to present you with 3 army lists, and I'm going to give you ideas of how to run them. So let's do army build number 1. This is full armor. Maybe I should have called it the Armored Core. Regardless, we're going to start the list with the things that aren't armor, and that's going to be 5 Sisters of Silence units. You need these girls for screening, doing actions, holding objectives. You just need them for that. So I'm going to take 2 Prosecutors and 3 Witch Seekers. The Witch Seekers all get scout moves. They have that cute little flamer that can overwatch and cause battle shocks. It's actually pretty dang useful. You can go sack one of those turn 1 to give yourself the area denial. You can use these to get yourself the containment, because you want your dreads doing things. And they're cheap enough that I'm happy taking 5 here. After that, I'm going to back it up with 2 Custodes Gravity Tanks. These are going to be massive anti-tank. Most Custodes lists tend to run 1 or 2 of these. There's a reason for it. I hate them. They're my least favorite units, but you know what? I think Custodes just kind of have to have them. It's their only source of reliable anti-tank in the game. And one of the cool things about Solar is that they do have a stratagem to ignore cover. So the AP3 of the Custodes Gravity Tank becomes actually AP3, and not that annoying thing where the guy's in cover and he uses Armor Contempt, so he's saving on a 4-up with a 3-up armor save. It's super frustrating. So Custodes Gravity Tanks do get benefit, and since you can move vehicles through walls in this detachment, it's kind of cool, because now Custodes Gravity Tanks can just move through walls here, which is actually kind of neat. Then we're going to take 1 Contemptor Galatus Dreadnought. We're going to give him the Adamantium Talisman to give him the 9 attacks at strength 9, AP 2, damage 4. So he is a monster who's going to murder things in melee. He's going to obviously take his either lethal or sustained hits depending on the target that he's going into, but now he really threatens vehicles as well. He gets to stage in a central ruin somewhere and just threaten to walk through walls and go charge and murk someone in the face. Then we're going to take 3 Telemon Heavy Dreadnoughts. These guys just will not die. They're going to slowly advance up the battlefield. One of them will have the 5-up Field of Pain. That's likely going to be your Warlord. And these guys are going to either be soaking fire or punching everything to death while they're holding objectives. And in front of those guys, you're going to run 3 Venerable Contemptor Dreadnoughts, who are going to be doing the exact same thing as the Telemons, except they die when people shoot them, but then they come back to life. So basically, the theory behind the list is you run the Contemptors up, you follow them up with Telemons, you try not to be visible and be shot, but it's going to be hard. And then if your opponent decides to kill all the Vendreads first, the Telemons gets him. If he tries to kill the Vendreads or the Telemons first, he's gonna have to deal with the fact that they're a lot tougher to kill. And then the Vendreads get into his lines uncontested. And then if we finally get to pull on those Vendreads, they come back to life and he has to do it again. So the army list works super well on a variety of terrain layouts. We've run it on GW, we've run it on WTC. It's actually a blast. It's super fun to play. And it is very, very threatening. And don't forget that all of these guys get +1 to advance and charge rolls. So charges become a lot easier with them. And the one that you're going to have advance and charge through a wall, he's going to be moving stupid fast. All right, let's look at army list number 2. This is mostly dreads, but there's a little bit of a difference. So we are going to run the 3 Venerable Contemptor Dreadnoughts like we saw at the bottom. I'm going to take 2 Telemons here. One is going to be with a fist and a storm cannon, and the other one is going to be with double fist. I take the fist and storm cannon on the guy with the 5-up Field of Pain because his job is more to survive, and the storm cannon really helps him not get bogged down by chaff and OC. And then the other Telemon is going to go double fist. And then I'm going to take 1 Contemptor Galatus, 2 Grav Tanks, 2 units of Witchseekers, 1 unit of Prosecutors, and then instead of having that second Galatus, what I'm going to do is I'm going to include the Blade Champion with the Adamantine Talisman and 4 Custode Guard. Now, the Custode Guard are outfitted a little bit interestingly that you might notice. 2 of them are going to have spears and 2 of them are going to have shields. One is going to have the Vexilla. The reason for that is because the Vexilla is going to give them the +1 to the OC to the unit. So the unit will have OC 3 on each model instead of the OC 2, which is really going to help the Custode Guard as they are trying to get reroll wound rolls on objectives. Now, I'm putting an extra shield in here simply because that makes them more resilient to the anti-elite infantry shooting. So now suddenly if an Excrin draws a bead on them, the Excrin might only kill 1 Custodian with shield versus 2 Custodians with spears, for example. Or maybe they get 3 through and they kill 1 Custodian with shield, put 1 down to 1 wound, instead of killing 3 Custodians with spears. Because the vast majority of the damage from this unit is coming from the Blade Champion. Let's break down just how freaking awesome this silly Blade Champion really is. And I know he's not a Dreadnought, but we still love him, so it's worth talking about him. Once per game, he's going to give the unit advance and charge, so you can advance 1 Dread through, and you can advance this and charge this unit in the same turn. When you give him the Adamantine Talisman, his Hurricanus goes up to 10 attacks at strength 6, AP 1, damage 2, and you can choose lethal because that has built-in sustained hits 1, so it'll be lethal and sustained with 10 attacks, strike 6, AP 1, damage 2. He will clear any horde with that. Or, much more importantly, his devastating wound profile will go up to 6 attacks at strength 7, AP 3, damage 4. And with the rerolls to wound that he's gonna get from the guard squad, he's gonna be fishing for those devastating wounds, and it is absolutely filthy. He has the other profile that you could also run, Behemoth, which naturally has precision built in. Take him up to 7 attacks with that, strength 8, AP 2, damage 3, also making him a nightmare for enemy characters. So that's what this list does really well. It includes the Blade Champion, and he will be walking through a wall, because, they're infantry so they can, and he will go murder anything in the game with that profile. It is disgusting how hard it hits. So your opponent's just going to have to hope and pray they can survive him and deal with all the crazy pressure from those Contemptors and the Telemons. And then lastly, this is going to be my last list for today, and then I'm going to sign off. Here is Min Dreads. So this is what I call minimal dreads. I still like it. It still works really, really well. You're going to take that exact same Blade Champion with your exact same 4 Custode Guard. Then I'm going to add in 2 units of Venatari but this is going to give you a lot more flexibility and a lot more speed on the map. Having the access to that free double rapid ingress is so critical in this game. A lot of times what you can even do is you can spend 1 CP to rapid ingress your Blade Champion squad, and then for free rapid ingress both Venatari squad on the board. Oh my gosh, that is so much board pressure that your opponent is not going to be prepared to handle. 3 units of Witch Seekers, lots of scouts, lots of actions, doing annoying things, screening. 1 unit of the Virtus Praetors, because don't forget, your mounted can also walk through walls with a stratagem in this enhancement. That's also a very, very big deal. You're going to take the Hurricane Bolters on them. Double Cletus Grav Tank, of course. 1 Galatus, because he is that anti-infantry that can just hold the wall if you're playing against one of those pressure melee lists, which there are a lot of pressure melee lists in the game right now. He shuts orcs down in a lot of ways. He shuts world eaters down in a lot of ways. He shuts a lot of armies down. He forces your army, your opponent, to put in very specific units into him. And then we'll have the 2 Telemon Dreadnoughts doing Telemon Dreadnought things. So this army is just more of a fast, focused strike army versus the others, which is more of a slow, advancing army. So take these army lists, try them out, let me know what you think of them. I've had great success with them so far, and so have many of my other clients. We've got a bunch of tournaments that are coming up, so we'll have some more data for you before too much longer. With that, I'm going to sign off here. I'm pumped to be doing Custodes content again. This is freaking cool. Anyway, everyone, this is it. This is Friday night. I'm going to pass off, and I hope you all have a great day. Crump on. Bye-bye.